just think, there are parts of the country that would kill for this kind of rain. Welcome. My name is Walter Bull. I acknowledge you and I welcome you to the beautiful Bradshaw Performing Arts Center for the initial program of a lecture series dedicated to the late North Carolina governor and our former neighbor, Jim Holshouser. Your neighbors, Tom Bedow, Larry Cadell, John Rauerdink, and George Little, have joined me as the organizers. Our team has created the series, and we anticipate guiding things from the startup through the maturity. This is a heck of a startup, I might ad-lib. We will be adjusting procedures to the marketplace with a basis on real-life experience. Organizing attorney Stephen Lader will keep us out of trouble. But first, the community is deeply indebted to Stan and Jean Bradshaw for their vision, dedication, and generous support that has provided these comfortable surroundings. The state-of-the-art visual and recording equipment and the latest communications capability to host and record these programs. The current planning of our group anticipates bringing in well-known guest speakers from around the nation. Your partially deductible donation will provide funding for future speaker fees. Broad-based support has begun to show itself, and our team really couldn't be more pleased. Moore County friends and neighbors are always eager to interact with current events, both the good and the bad, local, statewide, national, and worldwide. The experiences shown in our homes on television and via the internet do impact life not only in Moore County, but around the United States and in distant places across the globe. The headlines on TV and on the internet must be examined broadly, as well as individually and in depth. Sadly, today, there is often uncertainty in the pure information. Somehow the presenter may reek of opinion, even as the pictures and words somehow make it through to their presentations. One must often think of as the images and the words tumble through our conscious that we are being sold and not informed. Our mission is to offer our adult and student residents information that will augment their daily learning and introduce them to another universe of the interpretation of our wide world. We believe that our community seeks a reputation for quality support for those who may choose Sandhills as a premier meeting place for unhampered discussions, teaching dialogue, and a place to reach a conclusion and plan future action. In addition to being the home of American golf, the organizers believe that this community and BPAC can propel Moore County into a select list of those venues where national leaders, political and corporate and academic leaders can retreat to exchange ideas that will impact both the public and business policy. Our lecture series is modeled after the principles and practices of Jim Holshouser. His public and private activities, beliefs, and real-life executions will model our goals of a man who chose Moore County as his home following retirement from elected public life. Others will tell you about Jim Holshouser, the lawyer, the advisor, the visionary, the politician, and our friend. Some have decades-long memories of the governor, while others, like me, just came to know him as a senior statesman who never at a loss for something to say or important, and it was usually an important issue. We're blessed to consider the meaningful observation as our area grows and matures from a rural, resort to a dynamic, growing, diversified community. We are excited that so many people are choosing to call Moore County home. Moore County is America, and we can be proud of that distinction. Everyone needs to be aware of the game. Everyone needs to pitch in, knowing that our founding fathers had divergent opinions, and so should our young and old today. George, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Walter. Welcome, everyone, to Sand Hills Community College and to the Holshouser Lecture Series. First of all, I want to recognize Tom Beto, who's going to make a presentation. And so, Tom.
Good evening, everybody. It's been a pleasure to serve with Walter on getting this thing started. I want to congratulate Walter on getting us to this point, and you got to start somewhere, and we're starting tonight with all of you, and thank you for coming. I have a letter here from the president of Sand Hills Community College, John Dempsey. John has been very supportive throughout of this lecture series coming to be and growing into the future that we all hope for. The letter says, "Dear Walter, I want to wish you and your board good luck as you get the Governor James Holshouser lecture series underway. I'm more than sorry that I can't be with you this evening. Governor Holshouser was one of the very first people I met when I came to Sand Hills Community College. He was a person I respected immensely, and we remained close friends until his death. As you know, I am a political scientist by training, and I happen to write my doctoral dissertation on the subject of independent voters. Copies of this epic tome are available in my office for 15 cents. You want to sign up for one, I'll get it for you. Governor Holshouser always reminded me of the independent voters I studied, smart, engaged, even-handed, and practical. He was the person you always wanted in the room when a difficult or complex decision had to be made. Not only did he offer solid advice, but he could tell you how each decision option would play out 2 or 3 moves down the road. I think they call that knowing unintended consequences. It was like he had a knowledge of business and government that was on a plane above everyone else's. And because of his character and honesty, you always knew you were getting the straight stuff. So congratulations as you get ready to honor one of the Sand Hills' greatest heroes. He was Socrates, a father confessor, a political visionary, and a wonderful human being all in one package. Sand Hills Community College is honored to be home to a lecture series that bears his name. And what an opening night speaker. Governor Jim Martin is not only a famous and justly revered North Carolinian, he is living proof that chemistry professors can be rehabilitated if given the proper treatment. I just told the governor that I was a chemistry major too, and I turned out okay. Governor Jim Martin has been to Sand Hills before as a golfer whose stellar play astonished George Little and me on a little mini vacation that brought him to Pinehurst. He's the father of a student in our landscaping gardening program, and as governor who had an abiding passion for education, especially education delivered by community colleges. Jim Martin is the perfect choice to lead off this series, just as Jim Holshouser is the perfect choice to be its honoree. Good luck to all of you, and enjoy Dr., Professor, Congressman, Governor Martin, and his remarks. John Dempsey.
Thank you. Very good. There are lots of friends and and lots of people who served with Governor Holshouser are here tonight. And I just want to give you a special welcome and thanks for coming out. And I want to thank Jim and Dottie for what they've done, and coming down to be with us on this tonight. He was when we were talking, Walter and I were talking about this. I said Jim Martin would be the best to do it because he knew him well, both from Davison and both of them working in politics together and serving like they did. So, so let me bring to you Governor Martin. First of all, introduce him. James G. Martin is an American organic chemist and politician who served as the 70th governor of North Carolina from 1985 to 1993. He was the second Republican elected to office in the 20th century and the 5th overall. Jim Holshouser was, of course, the first. He's the only Republican to serve 2 full terms as governor of the state. Martin received his PhD in chemistry from Princeton University in 1960. He then served as an associate professor of chemistry at his alma mater, Davison College, until 1972. In 1966, he was elected to the Mecklenburg County Board of Commissioners. He served for 7 years, chairing that body from 1967 to 1968 and briefly in 1971. He was president of the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. He was elected to the United States House of Representatives in 1972, representing the Charlotte-based 9th Congressional District. He served there for 6 terms. In 1984, he defeated State Attorney General Rufus Edmonston by a 9-point margin. Many of us remember that election. Martin was easily reelected in 1988, defeating Lieutenant Governor Bob Jordan by 13 points. In so doing, he became the only member of his party to have been elected to 2 terms as governor of North Carolina. He was part of a 28-year trend of governors of North Carolina who were named James, having been preceded and succeeded by Jim Hunt, who in turn was preceded his first term by Jim Holshouser. While most political figures running for office were prone to make promises covering a wide range of issues from education to health care, Martin made one promise that garnered a lot of attention. He said he would address all of the priorities in the state, but his only promise was that construction on Interstate 40 from Raleigh to Wilmington, North Carolina, would be finished before he left office. That long neglected and last leg of I-40 from Barstow, California, would open up the southeastern coastal area to the rest of the state. He was true to his promise. The last unfinished leg of I-40 was finished before his end of his term. In 1993, he retired from political life and became chairman of the board of the James Cannon Research Center of Carolinas Medical Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. In January 2017, the Pope Center for Higher Education Policy changed its name to the James G. Martin Center for Academic Renewal, named after Governor Martin. Governor Martin also serves on the board of directors for the Martin Center. He's married to his lovely wife, Dottie, and they have 3 children and 5 grandkids. It's my distinct pleasure to present to you Governor James G. Martin.
Well, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. You know, with a crowd like this, we could probably sit around and let everybody tell some stories about Holshouser. That would really be interesting. Believe me, it's always good to be back here in Moore County. George would tell me every time, always says, for Republicans, this place is like money in the bank. And as was mentioned, our youngest son, Benson, studied landscaping here at Sand Hills Community College. Maybe I shouldn't admit this, but when I first heard the name of Sand Hills Community College, I thought it was Sam Hill. You know, as in, what the Sam Hill is going on? Well, George straightened me out on that, as he has done on lots of other things, and I forgive him for all of it, because I love him, just as I love Jim Holshouser. Great man, great leader. But before I say anything more of substance, I want to ask you a question. You ever thought about this? How would it be like if you could put vodka in your humidifier? Vodka in the humidifier. I was just asking for a friend. I thought somebody might. You have to be careful with that demon rum. I have a friend who says he recently stopped drinking for good. Now he only drinks for evil. It's a terrible, terrible thing. I don't know about you, but I'm not much of a cook. So even though I was an organic chemist, and a lot of that is cookbook studies, but I wasn't much of a kitchen cook. So when Dottie asked me if I would toast some bread for her, I just raised my glass and said, "Here's to bread." Look, I never make the same mistake twice, maybe 5 or 6 times just to see if it's all right, see if it works. So it looks like my next career as a comic is about over, so it's time for us to start getting serious mode here, which is why we're here. I read recently that the key to a good speech, and I know you're thinking there's a lot of different things that you could apply to here, but this one was right in. It said the key to a great speech is first, identify the big idea that you want to get across, the big idea, and then reduce it into one single sentence and see how far that'll get you. So I thought I'd give it a try, and here it is. So listen to this. This is the big idea in one sentence. Jim Holshouser was easily the most widely admired political figure in North Carolina in the last 100 years. Let's say that again. Jim Holshouser was easily the most widely admired political figure in North Carolina in the last 100 years. James Hubert Holshouser, Jr. He was the 68th governor of North Carolina, the first Republican elected since 1896. That's 76 years. He was a true friend, partly because he loved golf and because he wasn't much better at it than I was. So we got along real well. But that's something to think about. When he was elected governor, North Carolina, like all of the southeastern states, was dominated by one party, and it was not the Republican Party. And that meant that when Jim Holshouser was elected governor, just as in my first term, he got more votes from Democrats than there were Republicans, because you had to go out and appeal to them on the basis of what you believe and what it is that where you want to take this state, and he saw that. But in his early days, he had kind of a rocky start. I knew him first only at college. He was a year ahead of me. And during his senior year at Davidson, he wrote about sports for the Charlotte Observer. But he figured a career of that wouldn't get him tired of sports, and he didn't want that. Would have been all right if it made him tired of the Charlotte Observer, but he chose law school and went to Chapel Hill. And of course, he never tired of the law, as you knew, and as you saw him work beneficially to this great community. Many of you know so many things about Jim Holshouser because his personality was so good and so great, so trustworthy, that you knew that what he said he was doing, he was going to do. He was chairman of our Republican Party from 1966 to 72, sandwiched in between two other strong stalwarts, Jim Gardner and Frank Rouse. Jim served in the North Carolina General Assembly for 10 years and then was elected governor in 1972. And that was a year when his strong electoral coattails helped to re-elect President Richard Nixon. Give 'em Helms and Holshouser. That was the cry back then. Now, I remember 1972. That was the year that, Dottie, that I ran for Congress. And my favorite slogan was, a vote for Martin is like 2 votes for Nixon. Now, I have to tell you, how could I know that 1972 was going to be the year of the Watergate break-in? So when I ran for re-election 2 years later, I didn't bring up that slogan, but it was all over the TV because my opponent, I mean, it didn't cost me a cent. My opponent took care of that to see that people were reminded. Well, at least he was decent. He didn't try to make a case that I was in the Watergate complex at the time. Jim Holshouser, not only as governor, but as a legislator, and he was the leader of our party in the legislature too. But he was the best I know at being able to reach across the aisle and make a common purpose to work on, to find ways to help get things done, but get them done in a way that would be sensitive to the needs of the taxpayers as well as the employees who had to carry it out and the people whose needs were being met. I'm sure most of you know that it was under Jim's leadership that the University of North Carolina system of scattered colleges and universities was consolidated under one president and 16 chancellors under Jim's leadership, and he served loyally on the Board of Governors for many years. He's very active on the University of North Carolina Board of Governors, more than anyone. He was that one Republican who could get the attention of the Democrats who were still dominant at that time in those days. And I can speak to that. I served on the Board of Governors one term, and I had enough. I didn't have that charm that he had. But he also served on the board of St. Andrew's College. It's down the road. Another of his important achievements in the education area was the expansion of statewide public kindergarten, as enrollment doubled under his prodding and his leadership. He had this gift for working with legislators, certainly of our own party, those of us who are Republicans, but also the Democrats, for those of you who are of that persuasion. As long as they respected him, which they did, they admired him and worked with him for the good of the state. And yet if they did not, then he fought them and helped to get the message out in his own special way. It has to be noted that Jim Holshouser was not allowed to run for a second term because the Constitution of the state at that time didn't provide it. But his successor, Governor Hunt, was able to get the Constitution amended to allow for 2 consecutive terms. And I thought at the time that ought to be retroactive so that Holshouser could get his second term in. Now, one of the interesting stories you hear a lot about Holshouser, it applied to me too. In 1976, he and I supported then President Gerald Ford, while Senator Helms and many other folks supported Governor Ronald Reagan for the nomination. Maybe you heard a little bit about that. Well, Ford got the nomination in a split national convention, which Jim and I were unable to attend. I say we were technically unable to attend. Technically because we didn't have enough votes. And so we watched it unfold. Of course, you remember that was then the year that Jimmy Carter defeated President Gerald Ford. But it only took the Republican Party 4 years to get back together, and so in 1980, we were all in there for Ronald Reagan and worked with him real well. I helped provide coattails again to help him. But throughout all of this, as I'm sure you know, Jim had this little side issue, you might call it, both on his left side and his right side. His kidneys on both sides were lazy or a little bit tired and required dialysis. And so his wife, Pat, became a nurse so that she could handle the dialysis for him. And so that's when he got a transplant, not of a wife, but of kidneys. Even Rob Christensen wrote some nice things about Jim and Pat. So you see, the News and Observer wasn't all bad back in those days. But as you remember this and remember so many things of your own association with Jim Holshouser, remember this. Jim Holshouser was easily the most widely admired political figure in North Carolina in the last 100 years. And I'm proud to be with you to honor him as we provide for this lecture series here at not Sam Hill, but at Sand Hills Community College. Thank you so very much.
Isn't he great? I want to make a few comments and then we'll adjourn. But very good, Governor. A couple things about Governor Holshouser. He had a personality, and he loved to pick on you. And so I first met him in 1970. I was active in the JCs here, and we went to a national convention in Oregon. And Holshouser got the Outstanding Sound Citizen Award for the JCs in America. And so in the process, it's like a political convention. We elected, and Lou Marquetti and others remember some of this, we elected our national officers at these meetings, so it was a political type convention. Well, Holshouser had been put up for this Outstanding Citizen Award from North Carolina, had won the award in North Carolina. And so when they announced him the national winner, all the JCs in North Carolina put him on their back and carried him down like a political convention, you know. And so he got that outstanding award. So he and I got to be fairly close friends at that point. I had not known him before. And so when he ran for governor, he came through here during the primary, and I didn't think he had much of a chance against Gardner, and Moore County was kind of going to be Gardner territory. But there were some others here that were working for him, and so he got through that. And I went down to the boys' home bowl game and sat down with him, sat by him at the All-Star football game, and the JC sponsored that. And he said, well, how are you doing? I said, I'm doing fine. He said, you gonna help me this fall? I said, yeah. I said, my candidate lost in the primary. I was a registered Democrat in those days. And that's young, and you know, in Southern Pines, there wasn't many Republicans here in those days. But he said, I want you to help me. I said, well, I might be interested. So he got through the primary, the second primary, and he's running, and here comes the fall. So I'd gone to national meeting and come home, and on Sunday night, my phone rings, and it's Jim Holshouser. He says, I need to talk to you. Can you come to Raleigh tomorrow night? I said, what do you want to talk about? I said, I want to talk about my campaign. This is about 35, 40 days out from the election. I said, yeah, I'll come up there. So I got two of my friends to go up with me. I think one of them's here tonight. And we could drink beer. That's why I got my two friends to go. After we had met with him, we'd go across to NC State and have a beer at the bowling alley. And so I got my two friends to ride up with me. And I walked in, sat down and met with him, and he said, I need a fundraiser. And he said, I need someone that can go raise $1,000 contributions. And he said, I'm going to be elected governor. And I thought to myself, I don't know about that, but you know, I said it'd be interesting. I said, well, let me do this. I appreciate your interest. Let me go home and talk to my family and see what they think. And I'll call you back tomorrow. He said, fine. So we went over and had a beer or two, and we talked about it. And the two rascals with me said, I think you're going to do it, aren't you? I said, yeah. I said, he may not win, but I'm going to meet the business community in North Carolina, and that will help me in my business and help me, period. I said, because I'll meet the other people that I need to know. So the next day I got the phone call, and it was on Tuesday, and I gave him the phone call, told him I'd do it. I told him I'd report Thursday. So I go to Raleigh, sitting outside his campaign manager's office, and I pick up the News and Observer. This is probably 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It says, Holshouser campaign bankrupt. Staff hadn't been paid in 60 days. I said, what in the hell have I done? And I didn't cuss in those days, but I said, what in the H have I done? Well, so he gets on the phone to me. I go in and meet with the campaign manager. They set me up. So on Thursday, I go to Winston-Salem, and I see this furniture supplier up there, he and his son. And I walk out with two $1,500 checks. Now, you think back to 1972, and Jackie, $1,500 is a lot of money in campaign contributions. I had two checks from R.R. Triplett and his son. I never will forget that. And so I got back to the office in Raleigh, and I was leaving the Winston-Salem, and the phone rang. I had a cell phone, and Holshouser said, this is Jim, how'd you do? I said, I got two $1,500 checks. He said, I ain't never seen two $1,500 campaign checks. And that's the truth. And I said, well, we're on our way. So I raised about $125,000. Election night comes, the polls are real close, real tight. I get up to the suite at the Hilton here, and he's got two SBI agents, one female and one male. Now, I'm sure the Democratic candidate had probably 15 of them on him. He had two. It's pouring rain, just unbelievable rainstorm. 2 o'clock in the morning, you remember this, they announced Holshouser the winner. So then the press is really going after him. So he had two SBI agents. That was it. He said, all right, George, you're security. Let's go. Now, I was big in those days. So I remember outside of the Hilton, there's the press is on him, and he's getting his picture made, and it's just pouring rain, and all these people are around him. And that was election night, 1972, and the rest is history. So it worked out really well, and he got elected. So that's my little story to tell. So tonight we honor Jim Holshouser and Jim Martin both, because they were both great leaders in North Carolina. So with this lecture series here at Sand Hills, we want to bring in key speakers and key programs that will help our citizens here and the people in North Carolina. So I want to welcome you tonight and thank you for coming, and hope that you'll enjoy the lecture series. Also, I'd like to close by saying there are a lot of Holshouser people here that worked with him. How about raising your hand if you were in his administration? Thank you, people. So thank y'all. And have a good evening.